to tell you a story. I read about a church office who had stored on its computer the standard funeral service. And in order that the vicar would be helped, the church secretary each week would change the name of the person who it was, whose funeral it was. And so all the names would change at the same time. So one week Mary Smith passed away, and the secretary had the computer put Mary's name into all the right spots. So the minister would then say, as part of the service, we remember our dearly departed sister Mary. Or may the Lord now give Mary his eternal peace. And then the next week there was another funeral. And the second week it was the funeral of Edna Jones. She died, and so the secretary dutifully puts globally into the documents all of the names, now changing Mary into Edna. But it was a particular surprise when at that funeral they recited the Apostles' Creed, and they said that she was born of the Virgin Edna. A surprise ending to the story. Watch these computers. And certainly a surprise for Edna's family when they learned that she'd had some involvement in that account in the Apostles' Creed. Well, as we come to part 6 and the end of our 72 hours that changed the world, which we started on the first Sunday in March in preparation really for today, we find that we've got a surprise at the end of Mark's Gospel. You'll notice if you've got your Bibles, it will say something like, after verse 8 that Catherine read for us, it will say something like the earliest manuscripts and other ancient witnesses do not have verses 9 to 20. And you'll notice in your journal it's greyed out a little bit. So what's going on here? Well, most commentators today agree that verses 9 to 20 were written by somebody other than Mark, that they're a later addition to the Gospel, so they're not counted as part of Scripture. And the reason that they think about that is that because it's not mentioned, these verses are not mentioned in the early manuscripts, nor are they mentioned by early Christian writers, the very first commentators all those years ago. And the language is different to the rest of Mark. Now, depending on the ending, because there is more than one, some has a short ending, I think there's 2 long ones, 1 short one. Depending on what it is, in these 11 verses, between 9 and 18 words, which don't appear anywhere else in the Gospel of Mark. The style is different. It doesn't flow the same. And so people are absolutely convinced that this was not Mark and therefore is not part of Scripture. So Mark's Gospel effectively stops at verse 8. But you see something that verse 8 ends so abruptly that there must be something else. You know, verse 8, it simply says, the women, trembling and bewildered, went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Well, that's a surprise then, isn't it? After we've come all this way, we've come through Mark's Gospel, we get this surprise ending, especially in view of the fact that most people think that this is the part which we say is, and they all lived happily ever after. Which, of course, they didn't because there was persecution. But you take me point. After the crucifixion of Jesus and all the bad stuff, we're hoping to end on a high, which, of course, we are doing here this morning. It's also why Mark's Gospel is probably why, as a pastor, you should never choose this one on Easter Sunday. You will very rarely hear a sermon preached on Easter Sunday by any sort of minister based on Mark's Gospel. If you've any sense, you'll choose Matthew, Luke, or John. But you see, I think these verses are full of surprises. I think this is a brilliant passage, and I like surprises. I'm hoping that there's lots of chocolate eggs later on because I like surprises. Hint, hint, everybody in my family. Do you like surprises? Good ones? Because today, this passage is full of them. Slide number 2, please, Sophie. Back to Friday. Jesus was scourged. He was beaten. He was paraded through the streets of Jerusalem. He was crucified in the most brutal manner. He was dead, and he was buried by Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. In Matthew's Gospel, we read that the religious leaders of the day, they were concerned. They went to Pilate saying, now Pilate, we've got a problem. Because Jesus said that he was going to rise again on the 3rd day. So we know that his disciples, they're going to come, they're going to take the body, and they're going to hide it, and they're going to claim that he's risen to life. Will you please put a guard on the tomb so that that doesn't happen? And then it won't be as bad as it was originally, because this would be the worst of all things that could happen. And Pilate agrees. So he sends a detailed guard, and they seal the tomb, and they stand guard over it. That was Friday. What about Saturday? Now, we had a great praise time last night, and we were commenting on the type of songs, because on a Good Friday you have ones about the death, and on Sunday Easter, but on Saturday we were able to do both. But cast your minds back to that first Saturday, the Sabbath for the Jews, a restriction on things that could be done, and travel, and all sorts of things. But nothing said by Mark and the others about Saturday. So where were the disciples? Where were they? What were they doing? We haven't heard about Peter since the courtyard incident, when Jesus looked straight at him and he has that terrible, overwhelming guilt, and he weeps and goes outside. And the women, well, they've been mourning, they've been preparing, and at the earliest opportunity they're going to go to the tomb, because they've bought spices in the market, because they need to get there, because this corpse of Jesus is going to decompose. It's going to start smelling. 36 hours and more has now passed. They want to anoint his body and give him a proper burial. All of the Jesus followers on that Saturday, they must have been wondering, what now, mustn't they? Can you imagine how you would feel? Jesus is dead. It's all over. The journey's finished. It's been a great 3 years, but what now? It's done. And was it supposed to be like this? And I think they were probably very surprised at the outcome. And the grief must have been evident, mustn't it? After all, they loved Jesus. He'd been a friend of theirs for 3 years. A teacher, their master. What would life be like without Jesus? How did they feel that Saturday? I think they felt lonely. I think they would have felt sad, disheartened, broken, guilty even that they perhaps could have done more or should have done more, confused, lacking purpose, because Jesus is now dead. And so many people today, I think, who don't have Jesus in their life, I think their world seems pretty much the same. Very empty and lacking in purpose. And I wonder this morning, is that how you feel today? Is that how you feel in the world? How society has made you feel? You see, life without Jesus, without the one who died to save us, without the one who loves you more than any other, what is it all about? I think people in the world today are like the disciples and the women on that Saturday. I think they're Saturday people. They're living lives in which they become lonely, sad, disheartened, broken, guilty, wondering if they could have done more in life, confused, lacking any real purpose. You see, life without Jesus is all of those things. But this morning, I promise you surprises. And this passage is full of good surprises. Sunday morning was coming. And there would yet be this surprise ending, an ending that would make sense of the cross and of Jesus' death, that would make sense of God's plan, which would give hope for the future and change how we feel about today. Number 3, please, Soph. We read that Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Salome, they go to the market, they buy some spices with which to anoint Jesus' body. And as soon as they can, as soon as it's daybreak on the Sunday morning, they're up and they've got to get to this body, they've got to sort it out. The 36 hours and more has passed, and in those conditions, that body is going to be starting to decompose. They clearly weren't preparing for a resurrection. They'd got the spices, they were preparing to deal with a corpse. And this is confirmation, isn't it, that along with the rest of the world, they knew that Jesus was dead and buried. And no one questioned this, did they? The Roman authorities, there was no question Jesus was dead. Pilate had been told. The religious leaders, they knew he was dead. They just didn't want him being taken from the tomb. The disciples, his friends, the witnesses, they all knew he was dead. Nobody ever disputes the fact that Jesus was dead. Those who were there, they saw it with their own eyes. And the guards on the tomb, well, they won't be letting anybody in, and they won't be letting anybody out either. The women on that cool spring morning set out. They're half walking, half running towards the tomb that they'd seen on Friday night. They're holding on to the spices. And all of a sudden, one of them says, "Whoa, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. What are we going to do? How are we going to get in? The stone, we saw it on Friday. It's huge. How are we going to move it? Where are those pesky disciples when you need them?" You see, there was a problem. And the problem was there was a barrier to them getting to Jesus. The barrier stopping them from getting to Jesus was their biggest problem. And you know, our biggest problem was there was a barrier for you and I that stopped us from getting to God, to getting to Jesus. We couldn't have that personal relationship that really our lives crave. And that was sin. The sin which is in our life. Everything which is of greater importance in our life becomes a sin. We disobey God. We try to live our own way. We don't do things God's way. We choose to live life on our terms and not his. And that's all amounts to sin. And we end up feeling like we can't get to God and we are Saturday people. Number 4, Soph. The women, they leave the city gates, and just round the corner down one of the main streets, they think there's probably some tombs carved out of the rock there, and they're going down the road, and they see the stone that was closed and sealed on the tomb is now very much open, and they see some soldiers there in complete disarray. Oh no! Has somebody taken the body? Why else would it be open? Why else would that tomb be open? And I can sort of feel them quickening their steps and rushing there to get there to find out what's gone on. Surprise number 1. What they thought was a problem wasn't. There was no barrier to them getting to Jesus. You see, God had gone ahead of them. He'd gone ahead of the women, and he was going to make sure that those first witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus were not going to be prevented by a stone blocking the way. You see, the stone was not removed so that Jesus could get out. That's not why the stone was removed. The stone was removed so that the women could get in and see the empty tomb, because they were the witnesses. When Jesus died on the cross on the Friday, he removed the barrier of sin. Jesus was punished for our sin. He took God's wrath upon himself. He paid the price so that the barrier of sin between us and God could be removed, so that we could have this personal relationship with him. The way to God was opened. So if you came here this morning thinking, there's no way on this earth that God would want a relationship with me, because the sin in my life is so bad, he couldn't possibly love me. Surprise number 1, there is no barrier for you anymore, because your sin can be forgiven. You can be in a relationship with Jesus because of what Jesus did on the cross on the Friday. Surprise number 1. Number 5, Soph. The women go into the tomb and encounter surprise number 2. The tomb was probably cooler than the street was, even though it was a spring morning and it was still fairly cool on the streets. The sun's only just coming up, it's not warm, but you can sort of sense that coolness, and you'd expect to see dark, but there was a bit of light in this tomb. And they're expecting to find the corpse of Jesus, but instead they go in and surprise, surprise, they find a young man dressed in white. And God has sent his messenger to wait for them personally. And they were understandably alarmed. Of course they were. Who wouldn't be? In the darkness of the tomb, they're expecting a corpse and they get this angelic feature, this light shining. What a sight to behold. Who wouldn't be frightened? You see, God had not only opened up the way for the witnesses, but he sent a personal messenger to speak to the witnesses. Verse 6. I know that you are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who last Friday was crucified. Wow! This angel knows all about Jesus. We must be in the right tomb. It must be the right place. He knows about Jesus. He must have information. And information he had. Information that would not only explain to the 3 women what had now happened, but words upon which the world changed again. It changed on Friday and it changed again on Sunday. Words which down the ages have made sense of the cross and Jesus' death. Words that have brought hope to millions of people who have believed. Words that speak peace and beauty into the hearts of all those who believe and follow Jesus. Words written down for you and I so that we can read them. The Bible serving as our messenger. You know I'm no angel, so I'm not here this morning as an angel messenger, but you've got it written down. It's great it's written down because you can take it away and you can read it over and over again. And this is the message, the personal message to you. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. Number 6, please. 3 things that the angel says to the women in verse 6. The first is that Jesus, who was dead by crucifixion, recorded by Rome and the religious leaders and by all the witnesses, has risen. He is no longer dead. He was dead, but he is no longer dead. Number 2, he was there, but he isn't now. We learn that Jesus is physically gone somewhere else. He is not here. And then the third piece of information given to the women. Now then, women who had been there throughout as witnesses, women who stood at the cross and watched him die, women who had seen the body taken down and transported, and they'd followed it to the tomb and they'd seen it buried. These witnesses were now about to be witnesses again to complete the picture of the truth of what they had seen at that first Easter time. They were witnesses because they then went into the tomb and they look for themselves and they find the tomb is empty. Now then, this has got huge implications for them and for you. You see, if Jesus is risen from the dead, then death has been defeated. And if death has been defeated, that means that death is not the end of your story. There is something more. And death isn't the end for any of us. You see, the Bible teaches that we are all going to stand before the throne of God. And we are going to give an account of our lives. Now then, if you are a follower of Jesus this morning, when you get there, you're going to stand there and you're going to tell him everything about what you've done and why you've done it in your life of service. And the Bible tells us that you're going to be rewarded for that. That God is going to welcome you and you're going to worship God and you'll be welcomed into his kingdom for all eternity. But for those who haven't repented, those who refuse to believe, those who are not followers of Jesus, you too will stand before the throne of God. And the Bible says that if we've not repented, we will be judged and found guilty of all those things that we have not confessed and asked God to forgive us for. And punishment for all eternity will follow. You see, death not being the end has got huge implications for us all, not least where we spend eternity. Number 2, the messenger told the women that Jesus had been there but was now gone. He'd moved on. And Jesus is saying the same message to you and I today. Jesus was here, but he's now gone somewhere else. Jesus sent us that same message. He was here, but he's now gone somewhere else. Now, this message that was given to the women, notice what it says, verse 7. Go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. Jesus has gone ahead of them again. He was physically going to meet with them in Galilee. Now then, Jesus had tried to tell them this. Do you remember just as they were walking from the Last Supper to the Mount of Olives, and he was having that conversation, say, you're all going to betray me, and they were all trying to defend themselves, and in the middle of it all, he says, but I'll see you again in Galilee. I'll go ahead of you. And nobody paid a blind bit of attention. So he was having to send the messenger again to tell them again. And he was saying, I'm going to see you again in Galilee. I'm going ahead of you. Now then, to you and I, we get the same message today. Jesus is not here, he's gone ahead of us. But physically, we will meet him again one day. Either when we leave this world and stand before him, or when he comes again to judge the world, if that's sooner. But make no mistake, Jesus physically will meet us again. He may not be here now, but he has promised that he's gone ahead of us to prepare a place for us in a new eternal home, in the presence of God. The evidence was and is, of course, for all of that, is the empty tomb. He's no longer here. Now then, the message Jesus sent, did you notice something particular about it? Tell the disciples and Peter. Surprise number 3. Peter gets a personal mention. Peter, who had promised much and delivered not very much. I'll die for you, Jesus. Even if these desert you, I'm not going to desert you. I'll be with you, Jesus. Don't you worry about it. Only for the very next morning, a little old servant girl sin was he one of them, and he falls to pieces. And not once, not twice, but three times, he gives himself up as a traitor, as a betrayer. Peter had let Jesus down badly. He'd misunderstood. And some of what Jesus had said, he'd failed to understand and to follow what Jesus was saying. And yet Jesus makes special mention of Peter in the message. It's as if he's saying, make sure that Peter knows. Make sure Peter knows that I love him, that I will see him soon, that I am going to forgive him and restore him. What a beautiful picture of how Jesus treats us. Oh, it's easy, isn't it, to look at Peter and point the finger and say, oh, look at all the wrong he's done. But what about you? What about you this morning? The times that you have denied Jesus. The times that you have let him down. The times when you have betrayed him. Peter, speaking to me now, because I'm called Peter, put your name there if you will. This is the message this morning for you from Jesus. I love you. I always have, and I always will. And I can forgive, and I can restore you, and I will see you again. Jesus knows and loves you personally. And even though as his followers we sometimes let him down, his love never fails. His mercy endures forever. And his love for us is demonstrated in the giving of his life on the cross and in the empty tomb. His love is eternal. And it's a message to you and I personally this Easter day. And Jesus is saying to you, I love you. I always have, always will. I will see you again. Number 7, please. Three surprises. No wonder the women were alarmed. They were trembling and bewildered. Mark uses all those descriptive words about them. No wonder perhaps that they fled from the tomb, and Mark finished his gospel by telling us they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Is that it? Is that really it, Mark? Is that the end of the book? Is that what we've been waiting for? Where is the and they will live happily ever after? You see, I think there's one more big surprise at the end of this story. And I think it's Mark. I think Mark likes to present the evidence and let the reader decide. And that's why it comes to an abrupt stop. It's almost like he's saying and inviting you, the reader, to decide what happens now. Not in terms of how the story goes on, because the story, of course, is already written. And we know from the other Gospels that the women do tell the disciples. They get over their fright. The fright was mixed with joy, it tells us elsewhere. And Jesus then makes appearances to them, to the disciples, until eventually he appears to the disciples in Galilee as he promised, and they have that lovely barbecue breakfast on the beach. But what happens now for you? How are you going to finish this story on this Easter Sunday? James already alluded to the fact that, the real test of Easter is what we take with us, isn't it? It's not just that we rejoice today, it's every day. So what about you? How does your story end? What's going to be written for you? We've come to the cross, we've been working our way, haven't we? Started with that story about the boy, and the boy at King's Cross, which is known as the Cross in London, and he's crying because he's lost, and a policeman speaks to him, and then he manages to stutter to the policeman. He says, if you show me to the cross, I'll find my way home from there. And we've been coming to the cross. And on Friday we found our way to the cross, and now we know our way home from there. You've been to the tomb. You've been to the tomb this morning. The record is that it's empty. Jesus is risen. He was dead, but now he's alive. He was in the tomb, but he's now gone. He's gone somewhere else to prepare for us. And we're invited to look in and see the tomb for ourselves, that it's empty. There's an empty tomb. So what happens now for you? We're coming to the end of our Easter celebrations. What happens now for you? Maybe life for you, you might want to return to the Saturday people. Or maybe you feel like the Saturday people. But if you've come here today feeling like that, there's good news. Because you've come to the right place, because this is Sunday. The tomb is empty. You've got an opportunity to follow Jesus. For all that wrong to be put right. For a surprise ending that not only benefits you, but glorifies God. You see, on Good Friday, the world changed. And it changed again on Easter Sunday. 72 hours that changed the world. Because Jesus, God's one and only Son, the lovely, perfect, kind, generous, beautiful, powerful Saviour, Jesus, gave his life for you. He was dead. He was buried. And he rose again to life and is alive today. And he did it all for you. Death is not the end. The world changed. That is without doubt. And for 2,000 years, men and women, boys and girls, old and young, rich and poor, from every corner of the globe, from all over the world, through every age, have had their lives changed because of those 72 hours and what Jesus accomplished in them. On this glorious Easter day, I pray that you will rejoice and give thanks to Jesus for all that he has done for you. And that you will today and every day live for him and use all of your life to worship and glorify him and to lead others to the cross so that they too can find their way home. Friends, leave Saturday behind. There's a great surprise on Sunday morning. Be Sunday people. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. Hallelujah. Happy Easter, everybody. Amen.